One pot sausage ragu, extremely simple and a wonderful weekday meal. Let's do it. We're going to preheat the pan. Once it's hot, we're going to sweat some shallots and some garlic, and we're going to brown the meat. Now that the pan's hot, olive oil in, and we add the shallots. And you cook it without color, just to evaporate the water content, so that the sweetness of the shallots comes through. We add just a bit of salt to help the shallots get started. Because remember, the sausage meat, it's quite salty, so you want to adjust your seasoning at the end. People add the ingredients in different orders. Some brown their meat first, some sweat the aromats first. I find that when you're doing a one-pot recipe, you always have more control when you sweat your aromats first, especially if you're using carrots. Because the meat, as long as you give it enough time, would always brown and singe at the end. Whereas if you brown the meat from the beginning, sometimes you end up with undercooked carrots or undercooked aromats. If you don't have the luxury of multiple pots, I would definitely add the shallots first. Once the shallots are translucent, we add our minced garlic. You always want to do this in stages just because the sugar content of the garlic burns way faster than the shallots. After about another minute, we add our sausage meat. In the beginning, you want to help to break them apart quite a bit. Today, we're using Italian sausage with fennel, but you can use any Italian sausage. You just have to adjust the seasoning accordingly at the very end. So, at first, this sounds like boiling because the meat is releasing its water content. Only after most of the water content is evaporated, then you'll hear sizzling. That's when the meat is starting to brown. You see, there's so much evaporation going on. As you can hear, after about 5 minutes of evaporation, the boiling sound has turned into sizzling. This is the meat browning itself in its own fat. The Maillard reaction, when protein reacts to high heat and it brings out the meatiness of the pork. Of course, you want to adjust the heat accordingly so that the bottom doesn't burn too much. But a tiny bit of burning is okay because we're going to deglass the pan with chicken stock later. At this point, we add a few optional ingredients. I really like to add half of my parsley at this point. This is inspired by a Syrian recipe from the 1300s where they added coriander from the get-go, and the depth of flavor that it developed was a game changer. So now, whenever I use parsley or coriander, I always consider adding a bit at the very beginning. The other optional ingredients, well, not really optional, we have tomato puree and we have salted anchovy puree. Both of them you could find from Italian shops and they come in a tube. Or if you couldn't find them, you can just buy salted anchovies and mince them. I guarantee that you will not taste the anchovies at the very end. What it adds, it's an incredible amount of umami, making the meat meatier, more savory. Now we have a bit of a fond at the bottom. The meat has browned beautifully. We add our cherry tomatoes, just chopped in half, and never throw away the stems of the tomatoes and bay leaves. We put the lid on for the cherry tomatoes to release the liquid. That will deglaze the pan and cook down the tomato a bit. For sausage ragu, I always prefer them on the brighter side. That's why I like to add fresh tomatoes instead of tinned tomatoes. That's why I don't like to add red wine. For something meatier like a bolognese, I would have added red wine and I would use tinned tomatoes. So, we let it cook down for about 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, tomato has been cooked down, they're wilted, and you scrape the bottom of the pan to release the fond, the burn bits that are full of flavors. Now, we taste. We have black pepper. I like black pepper. And this is store-bought chicken stock. You can use water, you can use chicken bouillon, any liquid would do. It's a weekday meal after all. It's about 700 ml. Bring it to dry cleaning. So beautiful. Now, lid on for about an hour. I'll see you then. All right, after an hour and switching to red wine, we check on our sausage ragu. We take out the bay leaves and the tomato stems. Now, if you really care about presentation, the skin of the tomato should have floated by this point and you can take them out as well. But weekday meal, I'm not that fussed. I say that and then I proceed to take them one by one. But you really don't have to, I'm serious. By the way, tomato skin tastes like absolutely nothing. It's only there for the color. In fact, the stem has a lot more flavor compared to the skin. That's why we kept the stems in. Alright, that's enough OCD work for the day. Now, another optional step is that you skim off as much of the fat as you wish. If you leave this in the fridge overnight, that's the easiest skimming, of course, because the fat would float to the top and solidify. But since this is a weekday dinner, we are just going to skim off as much as convenient. As I said earlier, most sausages are salted, so that's why we adjusted the salt in the beginning accordingly. For me, this is perfect. Maybe just a touch of black pepper. And we're ready to cook the pasta. Now, I did promise this is a one-pot dish. And by one pot, I truly meant a one-pot dish. If you've been following me for a while, you probably know my favorite way to cook pasta is to cook short, dry pasta directly in the sauce. This is exactly what we're going to do today. I hope you at least try this method once because the result is just unbelievable. So, pasta in, 70 grams per person. In this case, we have 140 grams. What we're doing is that we are treating the pasta like risotto rice. We're helping the dry pasta release their starch, which would in turn thicken the sauce. So we'll end up with a really beautiful, thick sauce without having to use butter, cream, milk. It's my favorite method of cooking dry pasta. And of course, while it cooks, you can always take out more skin. Just like a risotto, in the very beginning, because there's a lot of liquid compared to the pasta, you don't have to stir the whole time. But once we cook down a bit, then you really have to mother it. If there's ever one day I should wear an apron, this is the one, but it's too late. By the way, I have the chicken stock here that I didn't finish, just in case. I don't think it's gonna happen today. But normally I either have a pot of hot water or stock by my side. In case it's out of water, we'll always add some back in to make sure it's not gonna burn. Okay, now, when the pasta floats on top, that's when you know you've gotten to the stage where you need to start stirring quite a bit. Yeah, my shirt is a write-off at this point. I'm buying an apron. That's it. This is so not gonna fly. All right, after 10 minutes and a white shirt I'll never be able to wear again, we check the pasta for doneness. That's perfect. And this is the consistency you can achieve by cooking the pasta with the sauce. I mean, in my ideal world, I would have a bit more pasta, a bit less sauce, but you get the gist. Now, stove off. For some extra umami, we shave some parmesan. We add the other half of our chopped parsley for brightness, a dash of lemon juice, again, for a bit of acidity and brightness, and just a bit more black pepper. And since this is a one-pot dish, I would just put it right in the middle of the table. The cast iron will also help you retain some heat, and you eat it family style. This is my one-pot sausage ragu, and I really hope you enjoy. Wow, I mean the dry cleaning bill from this one dish is gonna be